and we are live. This is the Cool Data Project Show. I am Kristen Kerrer, a developer advocate for Comet, where with one function, you can track your machine learning training runs. And this is the Cool Data Project Show, where I interview practitioners in ML, DL, and AI about interesting projects that they're working on. And I am super excited to have Tristan Behrens with us today. He works with audio data, which I have not previously played with myself. So I am super interested to hear about that. So Tristan, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Of course. Hi, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Well, introduction, how can I say? I'm a computer scientist. That's at least what I learned from university. I did PhD in artificial intelligence. I worked in like 9 to 5 in industry, automotive industry, because, well, I'm from Germany. That's what you do here in Germany when you consult, is usually this big piece of a German industry. And after a few years of working full-time, I decided to go into freelancing. Wanted to have a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more creativity. And it turned out that I was able to move away from, how can I say, serious deep learning to creative deep learning. So, well, although I know my way around all these great things like natural language processing, time series processing, image processing, and so on and so forth, I spent a huge portion of the last 2 years working with music data. And this year I'm doing this almost full time. So I'm excited. And well, as we all know, with ChatGPT and Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, now is the time of creative AI.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm super excited to dig in. So can you tell us a little bit about, these freelance projects that you're working on in music? What are you trying to solve for?
Currently, it's not really. So this year, it is not about product. It is about exhibits. I am artist in residence now. Started at the beginning of this year in Heilbronn. They have a coding school and associated a KI salon, so a saloon of people who are very, very interested in artificial intelligence. And my task is to educate people, and especially making artificial intelligence tangible, so that you can actually, that's the word, that you can feel it, that you can interact with it, because, well, it is so nice to learn a lot about AI if you use some tool or some exhibit. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm working on exhibits that are based on AI music, so generating music. That's what we have to keep in mind, that people can learn from, that they understand what AI is capable and maybe even what AI is not capable of.
Oh man, that's so cool. And so it actually, I feel like, ties into Ravit's question around, where do you see ChatGPT in the next year? So you are creating music, and do you feel like that's right? So it's obviously trained on previous audio data. Are you seeing music that you feel like is new, or music that's more inspired by and feels like previous things that you've been listening to?
That's a great question. Well, if I think about it, AI music is, well, you generate some music which it becomes distinguishable to human music the moment you say it's AI music. If you don't tell people that it's AI music, they are not going to realize that it is, because, well, it's also statistical learning, deep learning, so it produces something similar to what you trained the model on. It's even very, very close. So my work is very close to ChatGPT. I use Music GPT, so my own custom models that I trained on text data, which coincidentally is not language, but is music. And what I learned is that the process is the change now. The process for producers and for me as well, as an artist, as a musician, that is now a completely different level of working, of creating music. I mean, ChatGPT is so awesome because you sit down, you write your prompt, and you get a problem solved in no time. The Music GPT is on the same level. You start maybe with some idea, and then say, oh, continue that idea in some music language. And after a couple of prompts, a couple of iterations, you get a nice piece of music out, which you then turn into something that is a little bit more sophisticated in production. And what I really like about my work is that although I'm doing most of the work kind of alone in my chamber here, I work with multiple AIs. So I use ChatGPT if I'm doing implementation and like to learn something about music and audio. And I use Copilot for the Python part extensively, and I've been using it full time, like for more than 1.5 years now. And when I do music composition, I have another neural network that I use for creating note events, and then I put it to the digital audio workstation and turn it into a whole song. And this is very holistic because, well, not in the sense that I don't feel alone, because I never feel alone, but you have so many intelligent, smart helpers around you that really make your entire work a walk in the park. A time to be alive.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, have you always been really interested in music? Do you have a background in music?
I'm self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time in my life when I had to decide to, like, quote unquote, sacrifice one of my many hobbies and turn them into profession, or turn it into profession. And I decided to turn programming into a profession. But it was a time when, so we always had music around, listening to music all day in my family. And also a couple of my relatives are into music. My grandfather was playing the saxophone and the clarinet and the keyboard. And I have an uncle who's playing the guitar. And when I studied computer science, I got a little bit bored because it was too much programming, too much computing. And I went to my guitar uncle and said, can you give me guitar and like, give me some advice how to learn that? And then I went straight into playing guitar and then music production, learning about music theory, and then composing songs.
Oh my God, that's wild. And so I know that you're freelancing. Do you feel like, you have like what's the size of the demand for AI art? Like, are you really lucky to be in your position, or do you feel like there's a real demand?
I have a friend of mine who's a journalist, like journalist for a local newspaper in the north of Germany. And journalists, they write texts about things that happened, and they also like make those texts a little bit more interesting by putting in stock photographs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got really, really excited by, maybe it was Midjourney or maybe Stable Diffusion, because you can use it, well, creatively for very, very artistic things, but also for creating those stock photographs. So I gave it a try and it worked like a charm. And I think now these days he's very excited about ChatGPT, because I showed him, well, write something in the style of Washington Post, then write it in the style of a local newspaper, translate it to German. You have a couple of seconds, you get some code. So what I really, really like is, I mean, if I look at Germany, when we talked about artificial intelligence, the last couple of years were dominated by NLP and computer vision, and NLP not in the creative, not in the creative sector as well. Sentiment analysis, for example. And now it shifted extremely. I did not expect it. I was really, really surprised. Last year, when everyone started doing, I think it started with DALL-E, and then with Midjourney, then Stable Diffusion, and then now ChatGPT. Now it's the generative side. It's not classification anymore, but it's generating new tokens.
No, I'm totally seeing that too. I see on Reddit, the artist community is talking about, whether it's DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, or I mean, everyone's talking about ChatGPT. It's like we've transcended just data, and it's and it is very creative. I love it.
Yes. And so many people are now using it. I mean, it was for me a little bit difficult to make a couple of things that we do in artificial intelligence, can I say, approachable by the common people that we have around here. But now, I have a good friend who is writing like doing astrology things, like writing predictions about the stars, and well, GPT can also support in that. If you have my fiance is all about creativity, especially amongst females, and enabling people to be more creative and then synchronize it with the working life. And she also gets a lot of inspiration from those AIs, like just like optical inspiration from Stable Diffusion when it generates some color themes that you can use, backgrounds and symbols, but also with ChatGPT when you can discuss ideas and it gives you inspiration for more ideas. It's just gorgeous, these things, and really a surprise. I didn't expect it this year, last year.
Cool. I'm gonna have to ask ChatGPT for hex code color palettes and see how it comes up.
It does.
Yeah.
It
So
will.
for the person who is, doing machine learning and they are, more on the tabular data side, how difficult is it to move into working with audio data and music?
The neural networks themselves don't care. When I teach deep learning, that's what I say, because at the end of the day, you have a neural network doesn't know in which domain it is. It's just crunching numbers by the millions now and by the trillions. So many numbers that go through the neural networks. When you think about audio, it's usually like two branches of audio. One is audio. Now, when you talk about music, it's two branches. One is the audio domain, where you have the actual sound, and the other is the symbolic music domain, where you have the notes represented as some events in time. So my focus is more on the symbolic music part, but I also work with the audio. And both of them, at either the first or the second layer of a deep neural network, are time series.
Nice.
That's because, well, I use transformers, and once you get past the embedding layer, it's all multivariate time series, because sequence of embedding vectors, there you go. And then you can do fancy things with self-attention. A few years ago, we worked with LSTMs. Tabular data, I mean, you're working with discrete data where you just have a couple of tokens, and you also work with like continuous data, and you put it into some format. But with audio, you have a few more, not a few more, you have different ways of extracting features. And I think that's the biggest difference, that when you work with pure audio, you would like to do a feature extraction. And this is, it's like, it doesn't happen that often that you actually use a feature extraction in a neural network. But with audio data, you do it. You do this Fourier transformation that you get a mouse spectrogram, which is very, very cool, because it's the picture that shows you in one dimension the time and the other the frequency. And then you do image processing with the picture. So reducing basically sound to images, and all the big neural networks that do something with sound. I think Whisper does that. If you have audio generation, if you have all these classifications that work with the mouse spectrogram.
Okay, so it sounds like in terms of your features, you're sort of transforming audio to images and
Right.
putting that through the neural network.
Right.
And then in the end, you're going to take images and you're going to put that back to audio and listen to it.
Exactly like that. So in there's this text to speech, where you synthesize spoken words. It's the same thing. You start with empty, and then you generate a picture, which is the mouse spectrogram of the utterance. And then you run it through like a decoder, because, well, you cannot listen to that picture. You have to turn it back into audio, use a gun for that. And you get high quality. It's amazing. Now people are working on using those fancy diffusion models to generate those pictures to get even better quality.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So when you're thinking about collecting data for a project, what does that really look like?
Scraping the internet. It's similar to what OpenAI people did when they created GPT-3. So I have a couple of years of experience working with music data, and in 2021, at around Easter, I was freelancer. I was between projects, and then I decided to take one of my to-dos out of the backlog and then just test it if I can do it. And this to-do was gather a lot of heavy metal songs in symbolic form, MIDI files, and then see if I can train a transformer on that. So GPT-2, and it was, can I say, I had a transformer and the first neural network trained after 2 days. And after 2 weeks, I had a big enough data set and like a trained neural network that I can actually use it to compose my first AI music album. So it was one of the easiest projects I ever did. Like really, really, really. And the only thing that I had to do is find heavy metal music as MIDI files on the internet. There was a Russian server, which I scraped. And then I wrote a tiny little routine which mapped those binary files to some text that represents music, and then it just went to Hugging Face. I trained GPT-2 on that, and everything else is history.
Wow, that is so cool. Um, so what are the like difficulties that you sometimes, what makes you bang your head against the wall working with music data?
It's too many great ideas. I tell you,
Mhm.
it's just too many great ideas, because you have to think about it. If my goal at the end was that I have an album on Spotify where most of the musical material was created by artificial intelligence. That's the goal. Like, there you go, pointing at the horizon. That's where I'd like to end up. And on the way, you have to do a couple of things. We already talked about getting some data, maybe even cleaning and annotating the data. So the data that I gathered from the server, I annotated automatically because I could cross-reference it with a music database so that I could find out the genre. So that's why I not only generate heavy metal, I can go into power metal, thrash metal, and industrial metal like Rammstein. Can do all these fancy things. And then you train, I trained a model on that, and model is not enough. You need the model in a kind of composition tool, something that you can interact with, like create a drum beat. Well, I don't like the drum beat, do another one. Okay, that's cool. What about now having a bass line on top of it and guitar, and then you stack those fancy ideas on top of each other? And while I was developing that tool, like tiny little pieces of functionality, the thing generated, because, well, there's a test of the tool, and it generated high quality ideas. So there was the first thing that I had to learn is it needs a save button. Very important, even mid development. It's the only functionality that has to be there all the time, because you might miss an idea. And later, when I grew a little older, like after a couple of months, I realized that I have to let go of the ideas. Because at the beginning, I was not convinced that this approach would work. No, I expected this to go wrong, to have very, very low quality and harmony. And then I got the first samples, and I was like, okay, those samples work. It's cool music, but, well, it's coincidence, right? Coincidence. And then I tried to save all the samples, and turned out that it's a high probability that you get high quality content out of these neural networks with just the first prediction. And then the question is, well, although it's high quality, does it fit the actual mood of the direction you're going into? And then you throw away a couple of these samples. It's an amazing journey for any creative person, I would say.
Oh my God, so many questions.
Go ahead. I have the entire day.
Right, so you're
I'm a
talking
freelancer.
you were talking about the drum beat. So are you always doing each instrument separately? You do the guitar, the bass, and put it together, or do you sometimes try and get everything at once? Or is that possible?
It's possible.
Mhm.
It's a question of the encoding that you're using. So I'm using an encoding that has the different instruments separated. So first one instrument, then the other, drums, bass, guitar, but it's order agnostic. So it can go in any order. It can start with the guitar and end with the drums, and vice versa. There are a couple of encodings that actually mix that. Depends. They have a couple of pro and cons. And I'll give you an example. In the notation that I'm using, the drum track is one track. It's one piece of the entire big sequence that I'm generating. But this doesn't allow me to maybe just replace the snare drum with something else. It doesn't work with that encoding. So at around Christmas, I created a new encoding that has those elements of a drum separated, so that I can replace individual elements with something new. It kind of, well, that's the other challenge. With text, it's fairly easy. So natural language, you just throw in the text. You don't have a special encoding. When you talk about programming languages, Codex, Copilot, still the programming language, no fancy encoding. But music, there's not yet one encoding to rule them all. We're still waiting for the one that is small, because, well, you want to have lots of tokens for long sequences of music, but also that is versatile, that you can use it in a tool. And at the end, we are trapped, because the only thing that we can do with those transformers is predicting the next token,
Mm-hmm.
at least with GPT.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And so you were also talking about genre. Um, has anyone built a model for like classification of the different genres? And are you, you know, when you go out, you grab data that is from a particular genre? Are you just hoping that what the model spits out is also going to match that mood?
Yeah, and genre classification is a part of music information retrieval. So it's definitely a thing. And I think, well, definitely Spotify is doing this. I mean, if you ever have a look at the Spotify API, how much metadata you can get out of a song. And I don't think that all the metadata is human annotated. So it definitely comes from some AI that they're using in the background. But well, the thing with such annotations is that it allows you to do a more like conditional generation. If you like, you can annotate the genre, which is it's quite cool, but genres are kind of overlapping because, well, they are developing out of each other and they have similarities. So it's not really black and white. It's not a real classification. What I learned from one of the large models that I trained, this one was it didn't know anything about genre because it wasn't a part of a data set. I had 400,000 songs and only a fraction were annotated with genre, so I just ignored that. But it turned out it knows 128 different instruments. So they are annotated per default in MIDI files. And just by picking a collection of instruments, a combination, a group of instruments, you would actually go into a certain genre. If you take steel guitar and harmonica and drums, well, suddenly it's country music. If you use a synth bass and synth lead and the drums, it's synth pop. If you use electric guitar and electric bass, well, there you go, you get heavy metal.
Very cool. And so are you able to tell us about the project that you're like actually working on now?
A little.
Yeah.
A little, not too much. Well, it's well, what I can tell is that I sometimes have like periods where I'm focusing on one genre to explore it a little bit more. In quite maybe two almost 3 years ago, I had a lot to do with hip hop, trap, rap, and all these fancy things, which is, well, to be honest, not really my cup of tea. I come more from the electronic side of music with a little classical and heavy metal mixed in. Turned out that AI can do hip hop. It's quite fine. I had this like long-lasting experiences now for 2 years with heavy metal, which is quite cool. And now I would love to go, and I already went in the direction of electronic dance music, which is, well, it's also a justified style where I have a certain background in, and it's so fun to have an AI generate entire songs in that genre.
All right, awesome. And so if somebody wanted to get into working with audio data, where would you suggest they start?
So, well, the best thing I would say is, it depends on, well, audio data is quite general.
Yeah.
Audio data is quite general. I mean, you can just tell them how's it called. There's an MNIST, which is spoken. Like you get all those fancy digits and you have sound files for them. Try to solve that. And, well, the solution is you take a mass spectrogram feature extractor and you run it through a convolutional neural network for classification. So that's already quite cool because it opens the door to a lot of audio problems. If you like to go into music generation on a symbolic level, like notes, then everything that comes from transformers, especially GPT, would really, really help. Maybe 2 years ago, I would have said, well, get your hands dirty with the LSTM, but now the LSTM is definitely dead. I don't use it anymore for creative exercises. It's not, it didn't scale at the end. So anything like GPT is going to help you a lot with these things. And also, if you'd like to go into the generative part, everything that is like GPT is auto-regression. Based on something, predict a little more would definitely help. But the problem with creative AI is, and this is not it's not really a problem of audio, but general. There are quite a lot of neural networks that you can use. And there's not one neural network that's really made for that purpose. Because, well, stable diffusion, we've heard that, okay, images, but they now found out that stable diffusion can generate those MEL spectrograms. And now it generates music. It's the same neural network architecture. It's even just fine-tuned on the music.
Right.
So, but well, in a nutshell, if you just want to go into audio, do a lot of experiments with the MEL spectrogram, and then this will just open all the doors for you. And then it depends on the dataset size and what kind of problem you solve, the architecture you put underneath, which most of the time would be a CNN, but there are also transformers that use audio data. So MEL spectrogram, that's the starting point.
Very cool. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So, well, it's not really a direct question. It's more about like what is currently happening. I can tell you that when I started artificial intelligence, I did not begin with artificial intelligence like consciously. It was a matter of coincidences. So I wanted to be a games developer. And I heard that in Germany, if you want to make money with programming, which includes game development, you need a diploma in computer science. So when it comes to making plans, it was the easiest plan for me to do. So I went into a university. I spent 4.5 years the diploma in computer science. It's pure computer science. And coincidentally, when I was like mid studies, like after 2-3 years, we had a new professor for artificial intelligence. And he hired me as an assistant for theoretical computer science, like automata theory and Turing machines, all these tiny little things that we are using in theoretical computer science. And when I finished my diploma, he asked me, oh, well, what about doing an artificial intelligence PhD? I said, okay, why not? Because in games development,
why not get a PhD? Yeah.
why not? I mean, I'm always open to new experience. I mean, don't get me started. I also did I am certified yoga teacher, so because I'm quite curious, and I'm also into painting because, well, the world is like a paradise, a garden of different things to try. And I said, okay, why not artificial intelligence? But boy, that was a different artificial intelligence. I finished a PhD in 2012, which, well, another coincidence, is the year of ImageNet, and we only heard this as a slight echo. So there was no big conference in entire Germany about, well, have you seen ImageNet? No. It took a couple of years. So truth be told, after my PhD, when I went into industry, there was nothing that I could do in artificial intelligence. So I did my big share of digitization, especially in those large companies like Volkswagen, like dealing with smartphones, which is already a big leap because it increased productivity by just giving you handheld access to things. And then slowly it migrated towards that people realized in 2016-17 here in Germany, well, we need to talk. Because have you seen 2012 and what about chatbots and some fancy things? So in my last position as I was called topic owner for artificial intelligence at Porsche Digital Lab in Berlin, it's a very long name. I created a team and we did quite a lot of experiments and prototypes in artificial intelligence. And then I realized that this is now starting. And the trouble is that every year it's completely different. I tell you, I teach deep learning. So sometimes companies ask me, like, can you come over for 2-3 days and then we do deep learning introduction? I say, oh, okay, no, fine, I come. And then we do all the basic exercises and I teach them. My curriculum for teaching deep learning and also advanced courses on computer vision and natural language processing was quite stable for the first, I would say, 4 years of me teaching, maybe 3 years of teaching. And then I realized I had to get rid of a couple of things because 2017 with attention is all you need, everything changed in NLP. So lemmatization, stemming, no one needs that anymore. It's just you need a good tokenizer and then there you go. So I phased out a lot of things. And that was the first class where I said, okay, we are going to do attention is all you need at the end. And now I even have the vision transformer in my curriculum because people sit in my class. especially in Berlin, and they're waiting for me to talk about attention. And also another thing, Copilot made a real difference, because a part of my NLP class is teaching people how to do generative AI. And it's a class that I sometimes do for 5 days. And when I started Copilot, I demoed Copilot on the 3rd or 4th day. And there were people in the audience like asking, why are we still learning programming? I remember a student of mine who I showed like a longer demo about what Copilot can do in real time, and he had to go for a walk after the discussion. He said, I have to leave now because I have to digest this because of those implications.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I consider myself as more like a senior, a veteran developer because I started in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with Copilot, and I was immediately amazed by how accurate it is most of the time, how many, or well, the small amount of bugs that I have to fix occasionally, but also how high my energy level is while I'm doing this, and well, how often I go to Google. I don't do this anymore, and reading manuals is really gone. And now with ChatGPT, it's completely different level because you can discuss things first, get an understanding, like brainstorming, and then you use Copilot to put it into code. It's amazing time to be alive, and it's just a start.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get so excited talking about the history, right? And you mentioned stemming. Like I was stemming manually in like 2011, 2012. And like I just look at the evolution of what's happened, and just, XGBoost coming out in 2013, like completely just changed the game for people who were building logistic regression models for prediction on tabular data. Yeah, no, I say all the time, what a time to be alive, but it's such a small subset of people that can get excited with me.
And the thing is, it's the pace is accelerating. You can really watch it now in real time how much it's changed. It was this, so I put it on LinkedIn. I can't remember exactly which year. I said, I was in Berlin. I had my 3 days computer vision class with so many great students, and we were quite excited. And someone asked me, did you teach the vision transformer? And I said, no way, vision transformer is not state of the art yet. And then I had this feeling creeping on my back. And I checked it on papers with code, and yes, it just became state of the art in ImageNet classification like a couple of weeks before. And I said, okay, good. Okay, let's do this. Put the transformer into the curriculum, and now attention is all you need. And I'm a little sad for Jürgen Schmidhuber because there's going to be the time soon where I don't teach the LSTM anymore. I cannot do this. Don't get me wrong, LSTM is fine, especially for tiny little data set, especially if you want to deploy something on a small device. When it comes to benchmarks, what it can do, for example, in NLP, well, we don't think about these things anymore. As a teaching tool, it's perfect because it teaches you about memory in neural networks, especially when it comes to sequence processing, which is very important. I think even DALI is sequence processing. DALI is a variant of GPT, I think. It's just predicting the next token and then mapping it back to a patch of images. But I'm well aware that maybe this year, maybe next year, the LSTM has to go from the curriculum, and we are going to focus more on transformers. And also, like you see, this amount of code that you have to generate to get things done. Maybe you did before TensorFlow was officially released, where you had to glue together all those operations in order to create a neural network, and you end up with 300 lines of codes for MNIST. And then Keras comes and 30 lines of code.
Yeah.
And then Hugging Face comes and you have 30 lines of code, but you train GPT and you have the whole data pre-processing pipeline included. It's just amazing, like how far you can get. And the only limit that you currently have as an individual is the amount of data you can train on and, well, the hardware you can train on.
Yeah, no, the whole thing's wild. And yeah, the curriculum has to change as time goes. One of the things I always think of is I mean, I can't tell you how many people I taught to use stepwise regression methods for feature selection. And then, a couple years later, you find out that like it's not the right method, but it was the method everyone was using 10 years ago.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's
okay.
so wild. It's so wild. And sometimes I
Yeah,
feel like a crotchety old lady when, I find that I'm using something that everyone's moved on from like 2 years
yeah,
ago. That's
always. We're always we're always outdating ourselves.
okay.
Because,
Yep.
well, I have this certain like it is this self-given responsibility because, well, I have this teaching soul that I would like to keep a little up to date, but sometimes things catch me by surprise. As I've mentioned, for me, up until DALI, maybe this whole image generation was VQ gun plus clip. This notebook that everyone had where you put in some prompt and you get something colorful out of it, but really not a real shape. And then suddenly Midjourney on Discord, and we're like, what's happening here? Like creating all my album covers with Midjourney and then going to Stable Diffusion because it's free, and then realizing someone prematurely leaks the newest Stable Diffusion version, and I noticed this in a pub, and then had to spin up via SSH my computer at home and download it because, well, it might be gone if it's just a leak. It's such time of high pace.
Yeah. Oh my
I
God,
don't
that's
see it slowing down.
yeah, you've got the album cover and the
Yeah,
everything's AI in your space. And I'm
yeah,
like so grateful I have LinkedIn because it's literally where I stay up to date on what the new happenings are and the algorithms
yeah,
and everything. Just being able to like be part of a community where we're talking about
yes,
these things is a
yes,
massive asset.
yeah.
Um, and then, so where can people find you on these social media platforms? Where are you hanging out these days?
Yeah, so the best would be LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and on LinkedIn it's like open invitation. You can follow, but I will let you in if you send a connection request. And LinkedIn is also something that I like not really officially teach, but I meet so many people who go into data science and into career, and they want to get a job, and I usually tell them, for you as a data scientist, deep learning engineer, name it, it's not a big challenge to get a job, but you would like to get the job for you,
Mm-hmm.
which, well, sometimes you have to find it organically via network, and social networks are just awesome to do that. And I realized, so there was a moment in time when I consciously decided to do a little bit more on LinkedIn, sharing, and I had to learn so many things because, well, as you can see, obviously, I'm an extreme introvert. I'm very high on this character trait introversion, like almost borderline Asperger's.
Mm-hmm.
But I love to extrovert. So that's why I have no trouble being here, and that's why I have no trouble going out and teaching. So it's something that I learned over time. And if you well, I usually teach people do something nice and then share it with people, because, well, the minimum that's going to happen, you're going to inspire someone learning something and doing it yourself. There are like so many people who are just on at the beginning of a data science journey, and they are very curious about how other people's were like progressed on there.
Mm-hmm.
So LinkedIn, so anyone can add me, would happy to accept the invitation. And I post a lot of things there about the things that I'm doing, but also things that other people did. Because, well, this, for me too, LinkedIn is the number one place to get updated. You have to follow the right people, and then something pops up that might change your worldview entirely.
Yes.
It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Also, I'm on YouTube, so occasionally I record videos and put them there. So subscribing would be very appreciated. I'm
What's your
okay.
YouTube? What's your the name of your channel?
Tristan Behrens. It's just the name,
Okay.
easy to find.
Perfect.
I don't think I can't remember that I gave it a specific name. It's just Tristan Behrens, and everything is fine.
Uh-huh.
The same is for Twitter, but Twitter is something that I kind of neglected for, like, how old is it? 1 decade.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly ramping up my game there, finding around, like it's like an obstacle course, Because sometimes, how is it? You go to LinkedIn if you want to get informed. You go to Twitter if you want to get angry.
Oh my God, yeah. I shut it off
But no,
This
but
is
now,
good for me.
yeah, but now it's better. My problem with, well, I left Facebook ages ago because no, it was no. This is if you want to get depressed, then you go to Facebook. Well, when it comes to the things that I'm doing, I did not. It was not a really good experience. Instagram also, but music AI and Instagram is a little bit difficult. So LinkedIn and YouTube would be way to go.
All right, perfect. Well, this has been an amazing session. I've had such a good time chatting with you. I loved hearing about the stuff that you're working on. And yeah, so I think we've had a chance to speak about what you're working on. If there's anything else that you want to add, of course, you can add it.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, feeling is mutual was great. Awesome talking to you. And what I like to add is if anyone in the audience is considering about doing these things, now's the time. Now's the time. It's never been so easy to do deep learning in general. It's never been so easy to get access. I mean, come on, everyone can spin up Collaboratory right now and do some decent training there and then ramp up the game with something bigger. So many resources available. And at the end of the day, the only thing that I ask people is, wow, go wild, do something that you like. And if you come up with something, not necessarily a whole product, maybe just a weekend's product, share it with the people and inspire others. And that's why we're here, I think, learning and teaching and getting inspired and inspiring. And wow, with creative AI, we are now on the next level.
That's super inspiring. I absolutely love it. Yeah, so thank you so much again for joining us. Again, I had an amazing time. And thank you to everyone that hopped on. I really appreciate it. And I will see you again sometime soon with the Cool Data Project show. And thank you again, Tristan.
Thank you very much. It was really nice. Have a nice day. Namaste.